Meow, as they say, and yes, my producer there in the background, our team is really funky. Anyway, it's 20 minutes to 8 p.m. Welcome back. Time now for the Formula One segment. Alhamdulillah. Yes, we are talking about F1 2020. Now, there's been lots of different talking points. We've heard news that obviously the Dutch Grand Prix has obviously been cancelled as well and will not be held. Also, we know that the FIA has approved a new reduced cost cap, right, for the F1 teams and a new sliding scale rule for aerodynamic testing. Obviously, the F1 teams have obviously, in the engineers and the chemical engineers as well, use various different techniques to gain momentum in upper edges against the competitors in their respective races as well. Now, already a cost cap has been agreed by the teams and the sports governing body after Wednesday's vote. The cap for 2021 will be lowered from the original figure of $175 million per year to 145 million. Now, this is huge in the field of F1. Right. Also, we're going to be talking about the impact that the new F1 sliding scale aero testing rules will, how this is going to work. It's hoped that the move will allow a field to close up and prevent the bigger teams from gaining too much over the lower end struggling teams as per se. Now, tonight we're going to cross over now live to Yusuf Saib, our very own Salam Media F1 correspondent and our F1 enthusiast. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Yusuf, welcome once again. This is Friday Night Live ST. Obviously, it's been great to have the month of Ramadan gone by in Eid. Welcome. You are an F1 enthusiast and correspondent. How are you, my brother?
Walaikum salam. Sarfaraz, I'm well. I can't complain. How are you doing?
Awesome. Alhamdulillah. I'm great. Shukr with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Grateful for yet another day, another beloved day of Jum'ah has just passed us. Another week, 4 days post Eid. So alhamdulillah, yes, the body just I think is adjusting. The alignment.
It will take some
Balancing.
time. It will take some time. It does feel a bit weird though.
No, definitely. I think quite a bit of time in my case. But anyway, you're looking good. Uh, you know why you're laughing like that. But anyway, now, lots
Inside
of
jokes
talking
is
points tonight.
inside jokes, I tell you.
Well, that's what it's about. It's all about the lifestyle
Of
and keeping
course,
it
of
fun.
course.
Lots of talking points this evening. The Dutch Grand Prix 2020 called off, as with many of the previous Grand Prix. By now, we would have had up to about, I think, about 6 to 8 GPs already done by now, normally, this time of the year. We're going to be talking about the new reduced cap and the cost cap for the Formula One teams. I've seen a difference of about $30 million from 175 from $175 million to $145 million. And also, we're going to talk about some of the impacts that the new slide testing scale will have regarding aerodynamics. First things first, Yusuf, talk to us regarding the Dutch Grand Prix. Now, all of a sudden, as many countries are easing restrictions regarding lockdown, uh, what's up with this move now?
Yeah, it's difficult to say because I mean, as much as the countries are lifting restrictions, Formula One, the organizers at the FIA, they're obviously trying to get the season underway, but in doing so, you don't want to do it too prematurely. So at
Yeah.
present, where we sit is yes, the Dutch Grand Prix got cancelled. That has been the latest Grand Prix that we know of that's been cancelled. And at present, where
All
we
right.
stand is we believe that there is the season is to commence. Probably in July, and that will be from the Austrian Grand Prix. So we've had Australia, Bahrain, and Baku, and Spain, and Monaco, all these Grand Prix that were scheduled to have taken place already. As you said, we should have been 6, 7 Grand Prix down
Yeah.
already at this
Yeah.
stage. And so now it's about sort of picking up from those races those races that were already cancelled, and now we just pick up from the ones thereafter.
Now, I want
Pending,
to talk about something.
obviously nothing happens going forward.
Um, I want to raise a point here about the upper edge, right? And we are going to talk about the upper edge in a moment or so. as how other teams will obviously limit the bigger teams to have upper edges, right? Um, Talking about this, the F1 gonna obviously begin eventually in a few weeks or few months time, right? As we know, it should. For
Hopefully.
next year, they've mentioned the 2021 cost cap, right?
Mhm.
For 175 million down to 145 million. This is massive in terms of allocations teams can utilize. Now, here's where upper edge comes in because obviously now the likes of your Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, your top three, as I'd like to call, um, generally have the upper edge when it comes to budgets because they've got the multinational global sponsors. Smaller teams struggle a bit in that regard. All right. How is this going to impact now next season's planning for engines, aerodynamics, the mechanics behind upgrading the 2020 models, as well as maintenance for the team and for the season?
Yeah, that's a lot of points you
Considering the
mentioned in there. So,
losses experienced in the
yeah,
lockdown, I mean, considering the loss they've
yeah,
experienced now.
yeah. A number of things you've mentioned in there, and a number of valid points. You've obviously talked about, how do the teams approach this, um, going from next season onwards, considering the fact that we haven't even got the 2020 season underway. And let's not forget,
Mm.
a lot of the engineering that comes off the latest cars, it is used on the cars in the years to come. So, at the moment, we've got wind tunnels that are shut down. The team's factories are effectively shut down. So when we talk about preparing for next year's cars and getting next season's cars ready, the progress would have definitely stopped in that regard, in that department. So much so that progress would have stopped in the
Network problem there. We're just trying to get Yusuf Saib back on. Yusuf, are you back on there? Assalamu alaikum to you. And yes, sorry, man.
yes, yes.
Network giving us a problem. Right. So you were talking about obviously the financial budgets and the allocations, and obviously the technologies that the teams have obviously been utilizing, obviously will be for the years to come. Great. Having said that, now F1's new sliding scale. Let's talk about this. Very interesting because how these rules are going to work. Let's talk about how the rules will work and the impact this is going to have on racing. Because obviously, it's hoped that this will obviously level the playing field here for the bigger teams against the lower end or smaller teams. Right, number one. Number two, obviously, you mentioned the wind tunnel testing. Now, let's talk about this in particular.
Okay, so the wind tunnel, obviously, I actually read that this morning regarding the sliding scale and the wind tunnel usage. And obviously, we know at present, the bigger teams are obviously able to use the wind tunnels a lot more because they have the backing, they have the funding, they have the resources to do so. And that obviously gives them a bit of a competitive edge over the midfield teams and, of course, the back end teams. So the attempt with the sliding scale is obviously, the team that finishes first will have the least amount of time spent in the wind tunnel. And of course, the team that finishes
So that's
last,
you're
when
going
we
to
say
limit
finishing first,
the time. Let's say,
yeah.
okay, I'm Sebastian Vettel and
No,
I've
well, let's
got
say, for
now five
example, you
rings.
Ferrari. Let's say, for example, you
Right.
Ferrari and you won the championship. So you would then use the wind tunnel the least from the rest of the teams. So, for instance, you Ferrari, you finish first. We have 10 other teams. And I'm the team, let's say I'm Williams, for instance, no disrespect to Williams,
Yeah.
but let's say I'm Williams and I finish
Or
last
Alfa
in the
Romeo.
constructors,
Mhm.
or Romeo, whichever team it may be. I finish last in the constructors standings. I will have the benefit then of using the wind tunnel a lot more than you will be able to use it. And that is now, obviously, you can understand where the aim and the objective of that is to give me more time in the wind tunnel, gives me the opportunity to run to test the aerodynamics of the car in a nutshell. So I can obviously improve my aero package, improve the airflow of the car itself from front to back, understand what's the kinks in the armory, so to speak, and iron out those kinks and obviously try and improve the car from there. The interesting thing about that is I'm waiting to obviously see what your big teams like Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes have to say about that. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be too keen on the idea, but it'll be interesting to see the comments that come through from those teams, from the midfield teams, from the likes of McLaren and Renault and AlphaTauri and so forth. But at present, I mean, if I was Ferrari and I finished first in the championship, rest assured, I wouldn't be very excited about the prospect of me being limited in my wind tunnel compared to somebody else that I've beaten. But again, it's just to try to bring the field together, trying to take away so much about the elements of the cars itself and make it more about the driving and what the drivers can actually do on track. That's
talking
the
about
focus.
wind. Well, let's blow our direction towards the upgrade limitations. Obviously, in wrapping up the segment, from next season, there will be a limitation on the number of upgrades a power unit manufacturer can do over a course of a season. For 2021, they mentioned the minimum weight increases 3 kilograms. So there's going to be upgrade limitations. So there's lots of limitations. I mean, firstly, regarding the amount of time spent in the wind tunnel, now regarding your upgrades, and then obviously how the leveling of the playing field is. So obviously a number of factors coming into play here, Yusuf.
Yeah, Formula One is kind of turning in a different direction at the moment. I'm not quite sure if the direction is turning in would yield the desired result. That's the only question. But I guess time will be the
time will
telling
tell
factor
us
on that
that.
one.
I mean, it has to
Yeah,
be
100%.
implemented for us to see the
Yeah,
performance, for us to see the results.
exactly, without a doubt. So, it's better to try and fail than to fail to try. I mean, we understand what the objective of the FIA, the Formula One, and the organizers are all about at the moment. We stand behind it to a certain extent. I mean, I'm still have a very mixed feelings about things like the budget caps and so forth, because I personally feel that Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport, and I believe it's cutthroat in terms of technology and the advancements and all of these things that are made. So I don't personally feel a budget cap is something that should be introduced. But again, like I said, you understand the objective, you understand why it's being done. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll agree with it. But let's wait. Let's see how things pan out. I mean, like I said, Formula One is changing rapidly. Things are changing rapidly. Uh, Sebastian Vettel leaving Ferrari at the end of this season. We know this is going to be his last season. That came as a shock to me. So as I said, as the year progresses, you might find more developments regarding the budget caps and the wind tunnel time and the testing that the teams are able to do. So nothing's quite set in stone.
Going to be
Because,
very interesting to see all of this play out. Yusuf, Jazakallah khair for your time tonight, our F1 correspondent and enthusiast. Jazakallah khair for your time, my brother. We'll have a chat again soon, inshallah, hopefully next week, regarding some headlines. I want to save that. There are lots of big news, lots of speculation, but we got to keep the listeners and the viewers tantalized. So, yeah, that's the talking point. You and I know what we're talking, but that's where we need it tonight.
Yes.
Yusuf, until we chat
No,
again,
100%. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be on radio with you. It's always a pleasure to see you. So it's been fantastic. Jazakallah for having me.
Likewise.
And assalamu
Until
alaikum
we
to all
meet
the
and chat
listeners.
again, my brother. Assalamu alaikum wa
Inshallah.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yusuf Saib, our F1 correspondent. Yeah, so the Dutch Grand Prix that was scheduled will not be held any longer. We've talked about upgrade limitations regarding the big teams, closing the gap from the bigger teams like your top three Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull over the other smaller teams as well. Right. Anyway, having said that, now it's now 7 minutes to 7 p.m. We take a quick sheet break, and thereafter, when we come back, we're going to be speaking to Tasneem and Abdullah Mia, the owners of a business called Clenergy. Yes, Clenergy. And they're the world's first anti-aging restaurant. I thought I heard myself correctly. The world's first anti-aging restaurant. Well, for that and more, stay tuned. Keep it locked to Salam Media. We'll be back after this.
Listen to Salam Media.
Osman's Taj Mahal Spice